Good evening and welcome everybody. This is Obi-Wan Pez for N-Simplex Pachinko. We are going to be working on building thinking classrooms tonight. And just checking my audio levels here. Yep, check. That's better, probably better. One would hope. Right, we're going to be doing building thinking classrooms tonight from Peter Liljedahl. Chapter 2 tonight is going to be on how we form collaborative groups in a thinking classroom. So we're going to discuss what some of the ideas are that Peter brings up in his book, some of the implementation that I and several other of my colleagues used, and then, where am I going? I'm over here. And then try to see if we can have a discussion with anybody who wants to come in about some of the ideas that are laid out in the book. So in creating collaborative groups, right, we have a couple of problems that stem from this immediately. One is kind of the individualistic nature of the, what we called in the last one, what was it? Institutional norms. Ooh. So generally speaking, what we've seen in recent history is more like students are prompted to basically take their own education and think about their actions and their learning rather than thinking about anybody else who might be in the classroom. Some of the things that we've been doing in past years have kind of danced around the idea of creating groups, or we create groups, but the culture, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, the culture hasn't adequately changed. So then if the culture doesn't change, then the actual outcomes and behaviors that are going on in the classroom are not going to change. So in creating collaborative groups, oftentimes we have the slacking problem, where somebody's just going to kind of let everybody do the work for them and then collect the grade at the end. They could just, not want to do the work, period, or they might just not understand it at all. And this is kind of just a standard Venn diagram here of students who don't care and students who don't understand. You're going to have some in each individual group, and you're going to have some that are mixed in the middle. However, it is not going to be a circle, right? The ones who don't care are not necessarily always going to be the ones who don't understand. So we can have students who are in one group or the other group, or both groups. It all depends on the individual. And if anybody else wants to participate, feel free to yell out any other problems you've seen with trying to create collaborative groups. Again, we have the slacking issue. Generally speaking, students who care but don't understand are not even necessarily going to be slackers. Right? I think slacking kind of, as we discussed before, right? Slacking is its own particular series of behaviors. So we have slacking. Wow. All right. Let's go back to the Venn diagram. There we go. We have the slackers, we have the stallers, who again pretty much fall into these same two groups. Either they don't care or they don't understand, but really what's going to happen here is, again, the stallers are just waiting until the teacher comes up with the answer. The stallers and the fakers are in the same boat. Right, where
whether you're relaxing at home or out and about, make your music move with you.
these ones are waiting to get the answer from the teacher. They don't really care how they go about it. They're either going to pretend that they're doing actual work like the fakers, or they're going to not at all pretend to do any work like the stallers and just literally stall for time. Wait for you to throw out the answer. Right, the ones who do at least usually decent work are going to be those who are falling into the mimicking group, and those who fall in the try it group. Again, the mimickers are looking for easily recognizable patterns. Usually literal literal translations from examples. So again, this is me, or at least was when I was in high school. I wanted to look at the notes at the front of each chapter. I wanted to take those and directly apply those exact same examples that were in there to the problems that we had for homework. And when it didn't happen, I at least was more leaning toward the try it group in that respect. I didn't get frozen. I didn't stop and go, oh, I don't know what to do. I'll never figure it out. I did at least try. And most of the time I could get through enough of it. But I was definitely a mimicker. I was definitely somebody who wanted to go for the easily recognizable pattern, who wanted to just take the example from the front of the book, from the front of the section, and then copy it directly, pretty much word for word. So I guess technically, I think I termed myself as a mimicker plus. But again, that was me up until about differential equations.
Was it the voice? Was it the fire burning in me? All of the noise turned into choirs of heart.
Right, so here, they will try it, even if they don't quite possess the necessary ability, they're still going to at least try. Let me shift this up just a little bit here. Yeah, that'll work. Right, we don't really need the toolbar and tab names and things like that. Alright, so the ones who typically do the work in collaborative groups are going to be those who mimic and those who just try it. Okay, so Liljedahl says in his chapter that most likely, pretty much every teacher is using some form of collaborative group at some point during the semester. But are you satisfied with the engagement that you see with the students in the classroom? Is everyone participating as intended? So if you decide to split up the group into, here's your jobs. So, you're the recorder, you're the reporter, and everybody's going to at least try something. But yeah, whatever the gopher, I think, is the third one. There's usually a fourth in there because, 4 is a nice round number when it comes to groups like this. Oftentimes desks are arranged in groups of 4 as a square, so it makes sense to, attempt to have everybody in groups of 4. Leader, I guess? I think that might be it. Yeah, it's been almost 20, 35, how many? No, not 35. It's almost been like 25 years since I did any of that in, like, formalized groups. Whew. Okay, what kind of grouping practices work best for collaboration, or could make your own collaborative groups, collaborative grouping efforts end up working better? think this sentence is either awkward or I'm reading it wrong. What kind of grouping practices work best for collaboration? Or what kind of grouping practices could make your own collaborative grouping efforts work better? I think that's right. Oi. Right, so one more time. Which practices in group formation work best for collaboration, and which could make your prior group formation efforts end up working better? So that's what we're going for. All right, research shows that the answer may not be what you think. So in this chapter, we look at the way in which we group students for collaborative problem solving, and we look closely at how the way in which we group students for collaborative problem solving actually impacts the way students engage with the effort itself. By the end of the chapter, you should have a method and rationale for grouping students that will drastically shift engagement, participation, and community within your classroom. So that's really the three things that he's going for here. Right, engagement, participation, and community. All right, leaving that there. Right, so in all the classrooms that Liljedahl researched and observed, one thing always struck was the number of teachers who incorporated collaboration into their teaching in one way or another. This generally ranged from simply having students sit in pairs and conducting think, pair, share, turn and talk, whatever you want to call it, to having students work in assigned or self-selected groups for parts of the lesson. In elementary classrooms, he often observed teachers using the strategic grouping method. So naturally, this is the I'm going to put kid A, who probably knows what's going on, with kid B, who might be struggling a bit. Or for this particular task, I'm going to put kids A and B together who really know what they're doing, in order that they will be able to complete the task and then help other people or explain it at the very end. So, kind of depends. I've seen those happen. Right. Teacher carefully arranges either homogeneous or heterogeneous groups to meet either the educational or the social goals for the class. So this is also, you put the absolute dork like me over with some of the popular kids so that hopefully I can rein them in and keep them in line. That never worked. So, right, so what's typically done, again, prior to the study. Right, so we get this strategic grouping, which again, purposefully grouping the students to meet either their educational or their social goals. Right, based on observations, we found grouping for educational goals generally follows one of three rationales. We have the pedagogical reason. So the teacher thinks that the students can and will end up learning from each other. This teacher will create groups based on abilities, perseverance, or work habits that will nicely, in theory, dovetail with each other so that, again, those kids who don't do as well on something will still be able to learn from the other person who does well at that thing. Now, that could be anything, not just from the educational, strict educational perspective, but also including like organization, especially organization of thought. So if you've got like high school group that you need to start learning how to do proofs and things like that, right? Get a very detail-oriented person with somebody who knows their stuff, but maybe is a little sloppier, and they can really nail down their pedagogy. Productivity. Whether or not they're going to get it done during a certain amount of time. So teachers may arrange groups that lead to the completion of more work. So, for example, may require a strong leader for group work in a project, or they may prefer weaker students with stronger ones, again, in multiple areas, not just in the pedagogical sense. So, weaker and stronger students with direction, for example, with trying to figure out how to organize things. Okay. And third, peacefulness. Right? Which pairing, which grouping is going to make the least trouble for everybody? Right? Keep the friends or the disruptive students intentionally apart, because those groupings may end up leading to lower productivity. Right? And then we have the social goals, which also split into, roughly speaking, three different categories. These are diversity. So student or teacher may want to arrange students into groups so as to ensure a specific diversity, whether that be gender, national origin, who knows, right? Anything. Put people together who aren't normally together. Integration. This is going to be also putting people together who are not used to being together, so you can push their comfort zones and push their individual boundaries. Right, so get them with other students with whom they do not generally socialize. And lastly, dovetailing nicely, socialization. Teacher may specifically want to reward performance or positive behavior by allowing a student or multiple students to work with their friends. So pedagogical, again, this is more like work habits, etc. Productivity. Whether they will get stuff done or not. And peacefulness. Less conflict. Okay, diversity. Right, mix of groups or demographics. Normally this is not quite as surface level as just saying like, oh, we don't have enough X in this particular group. But, you know, as a teacher, you might decide to play it by ear and try to figure out what's going on. Again, integration. Mixed students who normally do not interact. And socialization. So maybe it's a reward with the ability to choose groups, for example. In high schools, we most often saw teachers allowing their students to form self-selected groups either for the whole lesson period or for a specific activity within the lesson. Although students may group themselves for educational reasons, more commonly, shocking, I'm sure, students group themselves for social reasons. We never did that in my high school. Psh, no. What? Right, and in a study, Liljedahl looked specifically at the goals for how students self-reflect or self-select their groups, and 95% of them said that they either grouped themselves or attempted to group themselves in order to just socialize with their friends. They didn't care about getting the work done, naturally. They just wanted to hang out with their friends. Be able to goof off whenever they could goof off, you know. All right, regardless of whether teachers group for educational or social reasons, there is almost always a mismatch between the teacher's goals and the student's goals. So this was another study by Kotsopoulos in 2007. And whereas a teacher may have pedagogical reasons for wanting students to work together, the students wishing instead to work with their friends may begrudgingly work in their assigned groups in ways that cannot be considered collaborative. Multiple studies for that one. These sorts of mismatches arise from the tension between individual goals of students concerned with themselves, their cadre of friends, and the classroom goals set by the teacher for everybody in the room. Again, shocker, I'm sure. Couple this with the social dynamics often present in classrooms, and a teacher faces a situation where students not only wish to be with certain classmates, but also disdain being with others. I'm calling you out, Kim. I know you hated being with me. It'd be really funny if anybody named Kim was actually watching right now. So, no matter how strategic a teacher gets, right? The mismatch in the goals by itself will almost always push students toward disengagement. Now, I'm not saying like literally every student feels that, but there is going to be more of a push toward disengagement for almost every single student who is not in a group that they like. And again, when we start looking at, pedagogical reasons, if you've been matched with somebody who isn't going to get the stuff done, or who causes conflict, then generally speaking, you're going to be pushed toward disengagement, even if you are one of the go-getting types who does literally everything. Or perhaps because you're one of the go-getting types who does literally everything. In the context of a thinking classroom, there's even a more problematic situation that arises out of both strategic and self-selected grouping strategies. Turns out that regardless of what strategy you use, the students know what their role in the group will be that day. Every student pretty much knows what the role is going to be for that particular group, and likely a student will not engage outside of that particular role in their group. And rarely is that role to think. So at this point, he went to multiple locations, spent over 40 hours in classrooms where teachers were using one of the grouping strategies above, either strategic or self-selection. Let's put that in here too. In an overwhelming number of cases, where either strategically grouped or self-selected strategies were used, 80% of students entered their groups feeling like they were going to be a follower rather than a leader, and to be a follower rather than a thinker. Hey Zach, how's it going? Good evening and welcome. Right, and Peter worked out this, or worked out. Peter had one of the interviews between himself and a couple of the groups, or a couple of the people at a group. With student number 1, the interviewer said, "So, now that you know what group you're going to be in, what do you think your role will be?" And the student said, "What do you mean?" And the interviewer said, "I mean, are you going to offer ideas or take a lead on any of the work?" And the student said, "Nah, probably not. I'm with Gabriel and Aisha, and they're both brainiacs. That's why the teacher put me with them." And second student, "I notice you're sitting with Francis Nahal and DJ again." "Yep, always do." "Your friends?" "Yep." "So are you going to solve the problem today?" "Nah, that's DJ's job. I'm just going to follow along." Hey, Zach. Yeah, building thinking classrooms. So he says that he had over 200 conversations about all sorts of he had conversations on all sorts of subjects, but received this on a questionnaire. As I said, there 80+% of the students, 200 students in classrooms where teachers were either using strategic or self-selected groupings. So he asked the questions: if I told you that next class you were going to work in groups to solve a word problem, what is the likelihood you would offer an idea? And if you were to offer an idea, what is the likelihood that your idea would contribute to the solution of the problem? So for question 1, what is the likelihood you would offer an idea? It was over 80% of the students who said that it was unlikely or highly unlikely they would offer any ideas. And 90% said it would be highly unlikely that one of their ideas would contribute to the solution, so number 2. So grouping method in those particular cases did not matter significantly. Both of those groups just thought, yes, very sad. Both of those groups thought that both they would not offer any ideas and none of their ideas would ever contribute to actually making any progress. I made a note on the side of the margin. This is a book that I have absolutely defaced because I just absolutely love... I was walking around for the entire summer with a pencil inside of it, and I was just like scratching all over it and doing... First we had thinking machines, now we have thinking classrooms. What's the world coming to? I know, Megamorph, right? Yeah, I put a little note on the side that said, so if this is their attitude in academics, what's their attitude in the political climate? Or what will their attitude be in the political climate? So they know that they're entering into groups in the role of follower and expecting not to think at all. So with the strategic groupings, other than those 10 to 20% who are accustomed to taking the lead in the first place, or, sharing the lead with somebody, everybody else is just going to live outside of those expectations and just be like, screw it, not going to do anything. And in self-selected groups, students immediately fall into dictated patterns of leaders and followers that already exist within the social sphere. So, if you are kind of a leader of your social group, you're also going to start taking the lead when it comes to a particular content thing. Because you know who among your friends immediately is going to have the ability to do the following. You know who's going to be able to do the math homework. You know who's going to be able to make any meaningful contribution. So you're going to sit there, you're going to be the leader, and then you're going to dictate kind of where things go. Because you already do that in the social sphere. So now you can do it in the classroom too, if you self-select. Either way, right, these patterns of behavior are antithetical to the goals of what we've stated in the thinking classroom, which, again, anybody who hadn't seen this before, the goals here are get students engaged, participating, and build community among the students in your classroom. So if they're already living inside of the social roles that they have outside of class, what is the community that you're building in your classroom? Three classes, one more to go. Oh. Right, we're already using the social structures. Prevalent in their lives outside of the classroom, so again, Right? And how do they end up building community if their community structure already exists from elsewhere? Motivated by Ilana Horn? No. You got one of these laying around? Or Megalomorph, do you know, honest question, less glib, do you know what the draw pictures breaking things up? Yep, okay. I was going to say, do you know what the current Common Core standard is for that? But yeah, building pictures or decomposition, usually the ways to start working with that. Okay. Yeah. With respect to why people disengage. Nice. So you got like 3,674 minus 5. Nope. 5,000. Yep. 1,928. Right. So instead of doing it the way we learned it, they've been breaking it up into 3,670 plus 4 minus 1,000 minus 900 minus 20 minus 8, and then get the appropriate terms together. Ah, don't do it, just rewrite it. Come on. Right. And then group things. Good year. Right, so 1,746. Yeah, okay. So if it does say using the standard algorithm, then yeah. Don't know if 1746 was much better than 1928. True. There was no Dust Bowl in 1746, but at the same time, a lot more people died of tuberculosis. So... and like, you know, influenza. No. Maybe not, given 1918 wasn't that far in the past either. Anyway. So yeah, that's more or less what they're doing for Common Core. Or at least last time I checked, that was what they were doing for Common Core. Write them out as separate decomposed problems, and then essentially you're just saying like, okay, do this simple subtraction, which is literally just one number, right? You're subtracting one number from another number, and the rest of it is just units to make sure that you're doing the same thing to the same sorts of things. I end up liking this a lot for at least being able to teach it. That's a good way to look at this and say like, hey, let's try it out this way and see if it works for you, see if it clicks, and then when we do the standard algorithm, we kind of see where things are the same or different. My problem with the standard algorithm is, generally speaking, it's an intellectual dead end, and you just don't really learn much apart from how to subtract numbers. You don't really go anywhere afterwards. It doesn't expand to, like, algebra. Whereas this one, right, this is 3x cubed plus 6x squared plus 7x plus 4 minus parentheses x cubed minus 9x plus 9x squared plus 2x plus 8. Right, these are the same problem. And all you're really doing is you're just leveling up from the use of numbers to the use of variables. Right? I mean, you know that, but... Literally, in this case, x equals 10, and those are the same problem. Have they never seen negative numbers? You could also say, like, you know, it's just a bunch of sums in this case. All we're really doing is we're adding or subtracting and then saying, like, all we're really doing is we're saying, like, we're subtracting these two things. And it doesn't actually matter which way you subtract them. All that really matters is what's the sign of the bigger one. There's, you know, the parenthetical factoring out a negative that you're not going to touch with a student at 5th grade level. But with this, you could say, okay, look, I know that you have probably seen a checkbook before. Lol. Maybe not. Right? If I have $600, and yeah, and that's the other way to do it, just regroup it. But I have an income of $600, but I need to pay $900. So, like, how much money am I either gaining or losing? And the amount of money, because they're in opposite directions, you're subtracting them. You're saying, I want the difference between them. And then the sign that wins is the one that has the larger value, because now you have a larger debt than you do income. So you are losing that amount of money. Okay, losing is just a label in this case. Losing is whether or not we have a negative or a positive. Right? And you don't have to say negative or positive. You could say what matters is then whether we're subtracting or adding because of this thing. You know, start with an easier one like this, right? Or like this. I have an income of $3,000 and I'm losing or I have to pay $1,000. So, like, how much money am I gaining or losing? Well, 3,000 minus 1,000 is 2,000. Okay, do the 50 minus 4. Same deal, right? Income of 50, I have to pay $4. Okay, that's a net income of $46. Well, what about this one in the middle? That one's weird, right? Now I have a net income of $600 and a net payment of $900. How do I deal with that? And it can create some interesting and rich conversations just discussing that with the student. Well, yeah, but you could also say, all right, look, we've got like 300. Well, how many hundreds is 2,000? Maybe a little bit awkward, but maybe that's getting too much into the weeds. Wish I could help you better. You know, one of the other awful things you could do, and I don't necessarily recommend this, is you could look at this individually as a 2-digit subtraction, and you say, okay, I'm going to add 2 to the top and add 2 to the bottom, because subtracting those numbers is both easier and also equivalent. You definitely don't want to do that, but nonetheless. Again, if you're having such a problem with the other one. Now, that's not a trick. I take exception to that term. And Zach can tell you how much I take exception to that term. Yeah, here we go. There you go. It is not a trick. A trick is a shortcut that doesn't let you think about something. It is a useful strategy when it is employed with correct thinking. If somebody does not know what the hell they're doing, on the other hand, okay, maybe it could be a trick in that particular student's life because they don't know what they're doing. They just know, I don't know, add 2 to both things. But if they're able to think to themselves, if I add 2 to this number and 2 to this number, I'm still getting the same distance between these two numbers, and that therefore means we're getting the same difference between these two numbers. That's not a trick. That's a strategy. All right, ads are going to start, so I'm going to hit the button. I need a little more bread because I still have oil left over. And coffee's out. Water's good. Cool. All right, we'll be back in 3 minutes. We'll talk more about some of the challenges that exist in trying to build collaborative groups in thinking classrooms, and then we will talk about what Peter Liljedahl's strategy is to building the thinking classroom and why this particular strategy works better than trying to do either a random nope, gave it away, than either a strategic assignment of groups or a self-selected group. All right, see you in 3. As always, let's do some arm curls with Doslo in hoist. As usual, start with the 20-pounders. Go a bit lighter if we can't sustain it. Hope everybody's been having a good start to your week. If anybody was missing stream last night, sorry. Had some stuff come up, and then I was kind of dawdling, and then ended up just not doing it, so. Oh well. But I hung out in somebody else's stream, and had a had a lovely time trying to hunt something down in Elite Dangerous off stream, so it's okay. Shoulders getting a little bit too tight. All right. So depending on what's going on tomorrow, I may end up streaming some either Satisfactory to make up for Sunday, or try and look at something. Possibly the game that my brother bought me. There we go. Not my brother's game. That's different. He did not make one that I know of. Yeah, so the game my brother got me was called The Swapper, which I think is a sort of weird, esoteric, puzzly type game. Kind of like Lorelei or Outer Wilds, or something really weird. Woo! Righto. So if anybody is interested, by the way, nixthetricks.com is a site. I went to National Council for Teacher... Nope, other one. American Mathematical Association of Two-Year Colleges. National conference in 2015, which was in New Orleans, where they had somebody not actually not affiliated with the original Nix the Tricks, but did a presentation on Nix the Trig Tricks, which I found very helpful. Because I was starting to take over as the trigonometry coordinator at that point. In fact, I think I already had it by that point, but anyway. Okay. There was also a section on some guy was doing like using math in karate, and I was like, ah, cool. So I went and I was like, this is not super impressive, because it was for people who probably didn't know karate very well. Would have been much more interesting for them, and Also people who didn't already kind of have some theory behind it. Anyway, it was okay. No offense to the guy. Right. So so again, our issues are that if we're talking about a self-selected group, then they're already using the social structures that exist elsewhere in their lives inside of your classroom, and now how are they going to engage or disengage based on those social structures? And how do they build community if you've already got a social structure in place? They already know what their role is. They know when and where they're going to disengage or engage. They're not going to engage in building community. So to counteract this, some teachers have developed the roles system, right? Right? Leader, recorder, reporter, gopher, etc. If there's any others. Oh, timekeeper, encourager, cheerleader. But then this assignment of roles only serves to exacerbate the aforementioned problem. So Peter spent time in 3 classrooms where this practice was being used and observed even less authentic engagement with the activities than in the prevalent social structures versions up above. Rather than thinking about the task at hand, they were trying to adhere to their roles, stay inside your box, etc., which many found helpful in order to escape their burden of doing work. Right? They could just say, no, well, you know, I'm the timekeeper, so like, I shouldn't be actually thinking about anything. I should be keeping track of the time. Hey, you guys only have 10 minutes left. Right? And that's wrong. Right? Adherence to the roles. Rather than giving us space to come up with ideas in order to think. And again, similarly, an escape into the roles from work, from doing actual work. They decide, oh well, I've got this job over here. I can't leave that little box. Right, and while we know the value and importance of student collaboration, the problem is that efforts to actualize collaboration through either strategic groups or assigned roles may be having a negative effect on how students engage with each other and the task at hand. So, again, how do we minimize the adherence to the roles and escape into roles? Well, so In this, Peter says, instead of either just eliminating the roles, at which point we're back to the square one at the top. Do we make that allow them to select groups themselves? Do we end up doing something? Do we end up doing something where I intentionally select the groups? And the answer is no. In fact, from his first line, adhering to the contrarian approach of beginning with a practice that is opposite to what the norm is, he decided to try random groupings. Now, there are other teachers who have done this in the past, and it worked okay. This is not actually that surprising, because, again, as I discussed, all of my previous professional development stuff that I've done has worked okay in isolation, when it by itself is chosen as my particular strategy of the year, particular strategy of the semester. It always worked fine. And getting groups to be selected randomly, for instance, going over to the computer, punching in the thing that says randomly select groups of X size from all students who are here, or you check out anybody who isn't present, and then say randomize the remaining students. Again, it always worked fine. So what was the issue here? So the first iterations involved teachers making new randomly assigned seating charts for each of their classrooms and then presenting these to their students with the explanation that these were random assignments. This proved to be spectacularly ineffective. We were seeing no greater benefits using this method than with strategic groupings. Students were falling into preconceived roles and not engaging in ways reported in the literature on effective collaboration. So what happened? Well, he ran interviews with the students, and he said, how do you like your new group? And the student said, it's okay, I guess. Did you like that the teacher picked the group randomly? Yeah, right. You don't believe they're random? No, of course not. So even though the new groupings were random, the students didn't perceive any sort of randomness in it. So why not? Well, the teacher said it was random, but that doesn't mean anything, right? To them, these are teenagers, right? They're going to be contrarian themselves most of the time. Right, so putting a seating chart on the wall and saying they were random. Problem was that students didn't believe it. Right, so they would think that, no, the teacher did not actually make a random grouping. They selected where they wanted everybody and then said it was random. So, although the locus of control was removed from the teacher, the students didn't perceive that the locus of control was removed. So we made an immediate adjustment and used playing cards to assign the groups. Task was done by labeling each desk or table with a card rank, 2s, 7s, jacks, etc., and having students draw from a pack of cards to determine what group they would be in and where they would sit. That change had an overwhelming effect on the students' perception of how things were formed and where the locus of control rested. Interviewer asked this time, how do you like your new group? Yup. This is the same student. At least they put the same name on it. Did you like that it was random? Yeah, it was cool to pick a card. Cool? Well, I was hoping that I would get a 7. Luis had already picked a 7. What'd you get? Jack? Maybe next time. So, randomizing it made the students realize that, no, the teacher was not actually in charge of this. The students did not have to pick off the top of the deck either, so it couldn't be like, oh, he stacked it or something like that. No. And I did the same thing when I ran this in my classroom. I took a pack of cards, I shuffled it, I spread them out, and handed one over like this. You couldn't look at the bottom, but you had free control over where you picked your card from in the fan that I handed out to people. So I would do my best to fan it out, let everybody have a chance to pick whatever card they could possibly get, and it was not, obviously rigged or anything like that. So it at least made them feel like they were, luck was in charge here. Right? Make it visibly random. Get some sort of randomization into it. Cards, dice, etc. If you have like a seating chart that you have up, obviously you don't want like everybody to end up in group 5, even though if you have dice, that is a possibility. So, there are certain things you can do. You can limit the size, which I think... Yeah, that's the next bit. So with cards, it's super easy. You just say you're going to have this, this many 3s and 4s and 5s in the deck. Naturally, if you're just using regular playing cards, there are only 4 of each kind there in the first place, so that's not really an issue. But if you end up using dice, one of the things you can do is say, okay, you're going to come up and just like from the top, go down the list and fill in that number space. So you roll a 4, fill in the 4th space. If the student then rolls another 4, or next student rolls another 4, then they're going to go, 1, 2, 3, and then skip the person who already filled in the space, and 4 is going to be the next one down below that. You reach the bottom, you go all the way back up to the top and keep counting. That sort of stuff. Until all of the available spaces are filled in. So although randomizing wrested the control from the teachers, making it visibly random was necessary for the students to perceive and believe that, yes, it is in fact random. Even if, again, even if computer randomization is random, you have to do it in front of them. Otherwise, they're not going to believe you. Another way to do it, really, would be if you have a computer program that will randomize it for you. So, for instance, we had Canvas, and if you went into Canvas, you went into like the groups section, you could then assign groups of n size, etc. You could, in fact, have a student roll a die and then say, how many times am I going to randomize this? And then they'll end up, they'll give you a number, you randomize it that many times, and then those are the groups. I don't recommend bigger than a D12. Right? After several more iterations with these 11 teachers and others, more nuances emerged. So it turned out that students will end up... The social roles that you play inside of a group of people that you've just met tend to become calcified after about 1 to 2 hours. I think it's probably, especially that when you're teenagers. You try to get a pecking order going and all that. So the teacher's job is then, after about an hour, to re-randomize. Right? On the order of every hour. So get everybody to find their groups, start collecting the cards, and then once that first hour is done, I had a 2-hour class, and a number of cases are hour 50 minutes. What I would then do is, after the first hour is up, have a quick discussion about what was going on, and then do cards again. Most of the time when I was in the community college, didn't even get that far. We just ended up staying in the roles for the entire 2 hours, because generally speaking, we were only doing the actual group work for around an hour and 20 minutes, and then the other half hour was intended on being spent doing some of the end stuff. So end of class, wrap up, and discussion about other cool stuff. Some of that also got eaten up by the beginning of class activities, which are also discussed later on in the book. Right, and so we needed frequently randomized, visibly random groupings. So again, frequently, i.e., approximately once every hour. Visibly random. And then the size, starting at about grade 3, the optimal group size was 3. Right, groups of 4 would often either split into groups of 3 and 1 or 2 and 2. So, like, that's not what you want. You wanted them to work together as a group. The other issue with this is that often students can hide in groups of 4 or larger. So they start working with another group. If multiple groups of 2 or 3 start working together, then some of the students can hide and let the smart kids do their work for them. But that's not what we want. We want them to also realize that they can be just as smart. They can have just the same kinds of insight. There we go. Insight. That's a word. Right, so 2 2 is generally speaking going to limit the creativity and the new ideas that are flowing between just those 2 people, because now they feel like they can't really work with other people. Their group is just them and their partner. Groups of 4, again, often end up splitting into either 3 and 1 or 2 and 2 anyway, and larger groups allow students to hide. Groups of 1, obviously, you don't want that, because then they're just individuals by themselves, and that's just terrible when you're trying to do group work. And then groups of, again, 5 end up splitting into smaller groups, or students just hide in them and decide, no, I'm not going to work. For the size 3 groups, this is going to help on 2 fronts. In order for something to be generative, in order to create ideas, I'm looking at you, generative AI, it needs redundancy, and also diversity. Redundancy in this context reflects things that a group of students have in common. So language, interests, experience, and knowledge. It helps them understand better, relate better to each other. Without commonalities, they can't even begin to collaborate. But if all they have is redundancy, then they're not going to do anything. They're not going to end up achieving anything beyond what they entered the group with in the first place. In order to be generative, they also need diversity, the things that individual members of the group bring that are not shared by the others. So your different ideas, viewpoints, perspectives, representations, etc.
Spotify Premium is the best way to upgrade your listening experience.
Right, so
Music fully when you play songs in any order. Download them offline at higher quality and listen to them ad-free. It's what your ears deserve. Tap the banner to learn more.
You only want me when you need me. Hello, my people. This is Fanny with the new single, Hairdresser.
right? Redundancy, again. Things in common. Diversity. Things that individuals bring, which are different. Me fail English? That's impossible. So again, when we look at these groups up here, groups of 3, generally speaking, have high redundancy and high diversity. They don't have enough students that people can get lost or just walk away from the group, or they don't automatically just start splitting into groups of 2. And also, they right? When we contrast this, self-selected groups usually are all about redundancy. So you're trying to have things in common with the other people around you. You pick your friends because they know you. They have things in common with you. There's almost never diversity in those particular self-selected groups because you're not reaching outside of your comfort zone to pick somebody that you would never pick. However, in younger groups, the optimal size here is 2. Even though it doesn't offer much in the way of diversity, students at the age of, here, what is that, 6 to 8, 6 up through 9, generally speaking, developmentally, still have this parallel play. And spend a lot of their time taking turns with each other to try and see what the other one can do. Parallel play, if you don't know the concept, right? Generally speaking, if you are playing with someone at that age, again, somewhere between 6 and 9, oftentimes you're not actually playing with them directly. It's more that you're playing kind of by yourself, and this person's also playing by themselves, and you have a interface front where like your activities will meet each other, but you've still got this sense that I'm over here and you're over here. We're doing our own separate things, and there's some interface between them, but not like a lot. Right, so this is how students really collaborate. Right, collaboration is just basically taking turns. Okay. And under the guidance of a teacher, so what are our goals for this? Mostly teach the children, K through 2, how to start doing, you're not going to get it in day one, obviously, but get the students to start doing active listening. So really engage with a person, listen to their ideas, and then be able to build off of each other's ideas. Alright, Liljedahl says that once they started implementing frequent and visibly random groupings, there was an immediate uptick in the amount of students' engagement and thinking. By removing the locus of control from the teacher and the students, and showing the students that this was, in fact, a random grouping rather than, teacher selected, or even allowing them to believe that it was teacher selected. Again, you have a deck of cards, you shuffle them, and you just hold them out. Let the students pick wherever they want to pick from. The students enter groups not knowing what their role would be within that particular group. So you're with somebody completely different most days. And then when you are with... Oops. Oh. That's unfortunate. I leaned on the undo button. Oh, that's not it. Alright. That's alright. I wanted to go the other way anyway. So teachers push toward true collaboration, which is, again, active listening, which needs to happen first. And right, building. On each other's ideas. Right, so keep in mind, right, these are still kids who are between the ages of 6 and 9, maybe. Maybe even still 5 in kindergarten. So, like, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. Active listening is going to look very different with a kindergartner than it does with a second grader, than it does with an 8th grader. So, you know, teaching active listening is going to be in itself a bit of a challenge, right? So right, listen and process the words and sentences. Nod when you understand. Shake head or shake head or prepare a question when you don't. Right, and then ask clarification by stating what you think you heard. Right. I think that you said this. Is that correct? I think that you said this. Was that really what you meant, or was that what you were thinking? You know, something along those lines. So there's a lot more to active listening, but like those are the basics. If you can get that going on, then you're going to have a lot better time with your partners in whatever area of life you start doing active listening in. If you're at all interested in learning about active listening, definitely look it up. Don't just go by me. Right, we did a survey after, not we, but they did a survey after 2 weeks of implementation and saw a definite increase in the number of students who said they would offer an idea. After 6 weeks, almost 100% of students said they would be either likely or very likely to offer an idea, despite the fact that only 50% believe that their idea would lead to a solution. So they're still less confident about their abilities, but they would at least be willing to offer ideas. Again, almost every single student said that they would now think that they would offer an idea pretty much every day. Aside from an increase in thinking, we saw several other benefits in implementation of frequent visibly random groups. Although many students rail against the groups they find themselves in on day one, at the 3-week point, this resistance is usually completely gone and they're open to working with anyone they're placed with. Conversation between researcher and student 1. So I noticed you tried to sit a few times with Jackson. Are you still trying to do so? No. Why not? Well, at first I thought that the teacher was trying to keep us apart. Then on Friday we got to work together. So do you think the teacher's trying to keep you apart? No, I don't think she likes us working together, but when the cards come up the way she did, she didn't change it, so I guess it's just up to the cards now. And researcher and student 2. I saw what you did last week. What do you mean? I saw how you switched groups. Oh, that's nothing. But you didn't do it this week. Why not? Well, I guess it doesn't matter so much who you're working with. I mean, it's just for one class, and then the groups change again. So when the teachers allow students to self-select, what we see is a reflection of social structures that are easily observable in the hallways. Students choose friends, affinity groups, or social groups. These social structures create barriers to collaboration in the classroom, and then when they start doing this in the classroom with the visibly random groups, all that just drops away. So, student 3. Tell me about how your group work went today. Fine. Who are you with? Aisha and Luis. Can you tell me a little bit about them? Okay, well, Aisha's smart. I worked with her one time before. She really knows what's going on, so I try to listen to her carefully when she has something to say. She's in my science class as well, and her sister's in my English class. How did you know that Aisha's sister is in your English class? Oh, we figured it out today. So when students work with new random partners every hour, they begin to cross social boundaries and become aware about each other in ways that were not happening before. I remember in 8th grade, I worked out that I was spending my entire day, all 8 periods, in the same room as one particular girl. So it was kind of interesting to work that out. And then like halfway through metal shop, probably a week later, she went, "We have every class together, don't we?" And I was like, "Yep." She's like, "When were you going to tell me?" I'm like, "Oh." I only just figured it out like a week ago. Okay, so these come under multiple headings. A willingness to collaborate. Elimination of social barriers. And increased knowledge mobility. And if we tie them back to the initial ideas that we had up above, what were our goals? Right? Engagement, participation, and community. When we look at these 3 things, right, a willingness to collaborate, is participation. Elimination of social barriers allows the building of community. And increased knowledge mobility. This means that here the knowledge is moving around the room. That's, I mean, it's building community a little bit, but also it's also helping our engagement. And also, right, the willingness to collaborate is also a little bit of engagement, mostly with participation. So we can see all 3 of our goals here, participation, engagement, and community, are being reflected somewhere within just these 3 things. I think there might be... Yeah, there's a couple more, actually, but we'll get there. Right? Increased knowledge mobility. So when they work in self-selected groups, social barriers stay intact. These social barriers in turn create barriers to knowledge moving between the groups. So here we had another conversation between researcher and another student. Hey, good problem today, huh? Can you tell me how you guys solved it? Yeah, that was a tough one. We were stuck on it for a long time. What did you eventually figure out? Well, we saw that the group next to us was using a table to check out some possibilities, and we could see that there was a pattern in the numbers we were using, so we tried that. That sort of got us going, and we got an answer pretty quickly after that. Was it the right answer? It was. We weren't really all that sure. The group next to us had a different answer, and it took a long time working with them before we figured out which one was correct. So knowledge mobility takes multiple forms, and what he goes with here are 3 actions that go into increased knowledge mobility. One is borrowing ideas to bring back to your group. Right? 2, members are leaving their group to go out to other groups to seek verification. And 3, two or more groups collaborate and or debate validity of solutions. So like the group above, it takes on a combination of these forms. Increases in increases in knowledge mobility also corresponded with a decrease in the group's reliance on the teacher. So reliance on the teacher had an inverse proportionality to knowledge mobility. Maybe not 100%, to a mathematical model, but, as the reliance on the teacher, or as the knowledge mobility started increasing, the reliance on the teacher decreased. So we have a causal relationship also that's starting to show itself. So that's pretty cool. Right, there were some other knock-on effects. There was also increased enthusiasm. Specifically for mathematics, but also like just in general. So several different students said something to the effect of, "Math's my favorite subject now. I love this class. I mean, math isn't my favorite, but I love coming here. The beginning of every class is a bit of an adventure when we find out who we're working with." And then, along with this greater enthusiasm, also came a decrease in student absences and lateness. Wow, okay. That's Monel. Good evening. Welcome. Lower absence and tardiness rate. Okay, reduce social stress. Despite early resistance to these visibly random groupings, once it was up and running, many students came to enjoy the elimination of the social stress, followed by having these groups that you are now expected to kind of fall into. You're expected to be part of that group with the popular kids or whatever. How are you liking random groups? Oh, I love it. I don't care who I'm with as long as I don't have to try to get into a group myself. Why is that? I'm shy. In social studies, the teacher always makes us pick our own groups, and I hate that. I hate the feeling of asking if I can join a group and then being told no. I just want to work by myself in that class. But I don't want to work by myself. It's just so hard. Okay, ads are about to start. We'll come back in 3 minutes, and thank you everybody for coming. My name's Obi-Wan Pez. This is N Simplex Pachenko. Be right back. Cool. Thank you to anybody who's watching the VODs on YouTube. Thank you to anybody who subbed and is currently skipping ads. Welcome back to anybody who has just come back. This is a martial art called Eskrima, which is a Filipino martial art which started way back when people were trying to protect themselves against organized crime. They would be coming back from the fields carrying stuff, and oftentimes armed with machetes, and then people from the local mafia would show up and demand their money that they just got from working hard in the field all day. And if they didn't do it, they would have these nice little, should I say nasty little, stiletto knives that they would stab them with. So the people of the Philippines got organized and decided, no, we're not going to do this anymore, and developed a martial art that was surrounding their use of machetes. So that became eskrima, and then when the Spanish showed up and colonized, they said, hey, we can't have all these people running around with machetes and practicing with them. That would be dangerous. They might overthrow us. And so they banned it. And instead, the people who were practicing eskrima were doing so with sticks rather than machetes. So now people practice eskrima with sticks, although there are polyethylene, I don't remember, plastic. There are plastic analogs which are the correct shape of either your kind of standard jungle machete, or the Eastern machetes, which are really nasty numbers. I think I'm probably going to get one at some point, but it's going to be a while. So there's also a we've been doing work with Chinese broadsword and Chinese broadsword and kukri as well. So kind of cross training through a few different like weight distributions of where the like balance is. Now I grant you they are just plastic, right? They are polypropylene, polyethylene, whatever it is. But nonetheless, they're they're quite good in terms of like figuring out weight and balance. So oftentimes what we do with stuff on stream is we just do a couple of warm-ups. So here, generally speaking, we start from resting position on our shoulders, and then each side we do a 45-degree sweep down and then up. 2 strikes, down and then up, down and then up. From here, there's also a few different moves we can do. So we did the cross maneuver, which basically starts from the shoulder, drops down, and then crosses in the front and does a double strike upward. It's a real nasty number if these were actually like blades, and if somebody was actually threatening you. You could just drop it off your shoulder and then slash twice, and preferably they're going to run away. Alright, the other option is forward. So we can come forward off the shoulders and slash down twice like that. And then we stop back at our shoulders again, hopefully, not cutting into yourself. Right, and then from here, we've also got a few other things that we did. I gotta remember what else. I think most of the ones that we do are actually from start a standard side guard position. So from here, we've got the one I was doing earlier practicing. The right one comes off the shoulder at a 45-degree down angle. The left one pops up and then follows it. So it's going to also go with a 45-degree down strike. As these come around, then we do 2 45-degree down strikes the other way, and then we keep this cycle going. We can either return, just do a single, or you could do continuous. However, if you're doing continuous like this, you're going to become predictable. And predictability is, generally speaking, a bad thing when you're doing martial arts. So you'd want to do a whole bunch of stuff to kind of mess up your pattern. So we could do this followed immediately by switching this to an upward strike pattern, followed by a bunch of other stuff. We could also then do, there's a few that we do. One is fan block up above the head, so it comes from the shoulder, goes up over the head, and then boop, like that. Followed by a strike across, and followed by a what's known as karik, where we take this stick and we come sink down to the left and let this kind of drag with it. So it's going to come around like a comma and then slice through the air that way. So it's a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's real nasty. These polypropylene sticks, I'll go with that, are 250 grams each, so quarter of a kilo, half a pound roughly, if you're American. The normal sticks that I use for just kind of doing stuff at class are 125 grams each. They're made out of rattan, bamboo. And these get a nice little whistle when you get them going fast enough. Unfortunately, my wrist is starting to pop, so that's bad news. But yeah, these are pretty nice. They get going, and they make, like I said, they make quite a nice noise. The big ones that I have, which are like, you know, super weighted, are made out of ironwood, and they are 250 grams, or no, these are 500 grams each. And these you get pretty tired when you've been playing with these. And also, if you actually hit yourself, you might do some damage. So, those are fun. But for anybody new, like Manal, welcome. We strive to do some martial arts pretty much every stream at some point in order to keep up skills. Math. Yep. So yeah, we try to keep our martial arts skills up because the last time that I did not do martial arts for 3 years was when COVID hit, and I forgot like practically everything. It was pretty bad. So I am doing both Eskrima and Tai Chi over here in the UK. And once I go back to Maryland in the US, going to be going back to Tang Soo Do and attempting to get my black belt. So. Okay. Where were we? So this also, the visibly random groups reduce social stress. So the pressure to pick right in terms of like you have to have the correct group according to your social stratum, and also right? The pressure to pick right and the pressure of rejection is all just eliminated. You don't have to worry about it anymore because you have been forced into these particular groups. And it'll be over in an hour, maybe 2. And as we read in the last one, that was especially true among like students who don't have particular social groups within these classes. But Peter also found that when he interviewed people who do have like social groups in their class, turns out it ends up really well too. So how are you liking the random groups? It's good. I don't like that I have to pick my groups. Really? I always thought you wanted to be with the other 2 girls. Jennifer and Hillary. Yeah, aren't you friends anymore? Oh yeah, we're still friends. But I don't want to work with them. We never get anything done when we're together. And it's tough to say that to them. And so, random groups helps me with that. Right? You don't have the pressure then to have to sit with your friends. Because again, that particular student knows she doesn't get anything done when she's with these other 2 girls. So therefore, it would behoove her to not sit with them, to not work with them. And the relief sometimes is so profound that on several occasions I have seen students reminding the teacher to please put them into visibly random groups. All right, FAQ section. Okay. In this chapter, you talk about the mobility of knowledge as a good thing. Won't the students just come to rely on this, and instead of doing their own thinking, they just copy from other groups? So, no. In the hundreds of lessons I've observed where frequent, visibly random groups were used, I've seen fewer than 10 instances of a group just copying from another group. Students tend not to treat knowledge mobility, students call it borrowing an idea, as a way to reduce thinking, but rather they use it as a way to keep thinking when they are stuck. So students get a prod or a poke rather than the answer. Now this may take a little bit of time for them to realize that that's what they need to do, but it does work, right? It does get them to think to themselves, if I just go get the answer, then I don't learn anything and I don't actually get an improvement on my grade. I have to now understand how all of this stuff works, which is sometimes a little annoying, but at the same time, they'll get it. Eventually. Will the students whose idea is being borrowed be okay with it? Well, that depends on the current culture in your class. So in settings where students are used to competing for praise and prestige, groups will likely try to hide their answers from each other. Thanks to the ubiquity of visibly random groups, the subsequent elimination of social barriers, group boundaries begin to become porous. Although group boundaries are defined for the one period, these boundaries are clearly temporary and arbitrary. This allows them to also be seen to be open, and with the free movement of members from one group to another, ideas also naturally begin flowing across said boundaries. You say that students will become agreeable to work in any group that they're placed with, but I can think of some students that will not like this. Will they eventually? Students being agreeable to work in any group they're placed in is not the same as students liking frequently visible random groups. You will have students who would still prefer to work alone or pick their own groups, but our research shows that even these students do more thinking when they're in random groups. You make it sound like the mobility of knowledge will automatically start to happen. I've now been doing random groups for a while and I'm just not seeing it. Is there anything else that I can do to help it along? I will discuss this at length in Chapter 8, so for us that's going to be in 6 more weeks. through the lens of fostering student autonomy. For now, however, you can help it along by pointing out to groups where, in the room, they can find knowledge that they might need. You can also put groups together that you know need to move some knowledge between them. When I use a deck of cards to create random groups, I get some students groups of 4 and some groups of 2, and I always seem to have one student who has no partners. How do I avoid this? So for this, you need to set up the deck ahead of time. First of all, have only 3 of each rank of card in your deck. 3 aces, 3 tens, etc. If you're teaching grades K through 2, make it 2 of each rank. Second, make sure the total number of cards in your deck is equal to the total number of students enrolled in the class. Finally, if some students are absent, remove a single card from each rank until you have the correct number of cards. This will ensure that there will never be a group size of 1, such as if you randomly select off the top of the deck, right? If you know that somebody's going to be missing and you burn a card, then you burn more than 1 card, then it's possible that you just burn 2 of the same rank. So that might be a problem. This also has the benefit, if the student arrives late, you just tell them to pick a card from the remaining singletons and plug them into an already functioning group of 2. This avoids having to make a new group out of students who arrive late. I have some students who are constantly switching cards or not going to the group that the card specifies. How do I deal with this? There are 2 ways to deal. First, you can target that student and ask them to show you the card after they picked it. Second, you can have all students show their card after they've chosen it. Both of these methods create the impression that you know what card a specific student has, and that you will be watching to make sure that they go where they're supposed to. It sounds crazy, but the students really believe that you know all the cards. If I don't want to use cards, are there other methods to randomize groups, and are they as good? Some teachers like to use popsicle sticks with students' names, name cards created by the students, or photographs of students to make groups. Others like to use technology. It doesn't matter what you use as long as it's random and the students perceive it as random. Technology tools tend to be a bit of a black box, so sometimes students don't trust it. To enhance the perception of randomness, you can let one student roll a die and then come up and push the button on the randomizer as many times as the die shows. Yeah, that's what I said earlier. Regardless of what method you use, we found that transitions are more easily facilitated if your method of randomization doesn't just tell them what group they're in, but also tells them where to go in the room to meet up with their group. This is most easily accomplished by labeling clusters of desks or sections of the vertical boards with the same labels as the randomizers. So if you use cards, label the workstations, ace, 2, 3, etc. through king. If you use a digital randomizer that names the team by letters or color, use these to label the workstation. I teach my kids all day and want to have them in groups for lots of different subjects. Should I be randomizing them for every class? Although randomizing the groups about once every hour proved to be best, it's not practical if you have your students all day. In which case, we made use of natural transitions like lunch, recess, coming back from the library or the gym. In essence, you randomize them every time they come into the classroom. I have my students in desks. They have all their stuff in their desks. Trying to move these around several times a day will be a nightmare. Any suggestions? Only in elementary schools do we allow students to own real estate in a classroom, and this comes with a heightened sense of entitlement, ownership, and protectiveness over their real estate. You may have seen students getting stressed when someone sits in their desk. We found that the best way to deal with this is to get their stuff out of their desks and store it in bins elsewhere in the classroom, and that way you can just grab it and go to wherever you sit whenever you need to. I think of 2 students right now who absolutely should never be together. How do I deal with this? There are several reasons we may wish to keep students apart from each other. Ironically, regardless of the reason, those students often want to be together. And that will happen when you start randomizing your groups, usually on the first day. The best thing to do when this happens is to visit the group and just say, hey, we're going to have a problem here? More often than not, these students are so thrilled to be together, they don't want to ruin the chances of it happening again. If the situation is one where the students don't want to be together, then the intervention is different. Treat them being together like it is the most normal thing in the world, just like any other group. The more normal you make it, the more likely they are going to be okay with it. Students are highly attuned to the things that you worry about. If you worry about them being together, then they're going to fixate on this. If, despite this, you sense trouble brewing, visit the group and remind them that it's just for one class. You expect they will be respectful to each other. If the situation is one where students really shouldn't be together, then you will find a way to work around this. However, be certain that it is the case that they really should not be working together, and that it's not just you perceiving or preferring that they shouldn't be together. There is, in fact, a difference. I'm worried about what will happen when a weaker student ends up in the same group as a stronger student. Won't that weaker student get excluded or marginalized? I will discuss this in greater detail in Chapter 9. For now, however, I will just say that aside from mobilizing knowledge, frequently visible random groups also mobilizes empathy. As a society, we give far too little credit for the empathy that children have for each other. Perhaps this is a byproduct of our efforts to stem school and social media bullying and exclusion. In our efforts to stem these social ails, we build up an assumption that, without our interventions, all kids would be capable of perpetrating such acts. But this just isn't true. Children have an unbelievable capacity for empathy for each other. They know which students are strong and weak. They have special designation, which have special designations, and which receive adaptations or accommodations, and yet they still see each other as peers and friends. Random groups puts this empathy into motion and gives them a venue to play it out in. I have many times been in classrooms where I have observed students make room in their group for someone who is academically weaker. For instance, the following exchange took place in a grade 10 classroom. Okay, Amber, you're going to be our calculator girl. Whenever there's something to calculate, you're going to help us with that. Hey, you're the one. You're the one that's going to help us get through this. Amber is a girl with an intellectual disability, and these boys found something that Amber could be successful with, supported her in this, and celebrated her when she helped them get through it. Question. For a long time now, I've been working on differentiating my instruction for my learners. This works best if my students are in ability groupings. How will that work if I start to randomize them? It will be difficult for you to believe this right now, but over time it will be fine. This is for 3 reasons. 1, with the integration of other thinking practices in this book, all of your students will become better at thinking. They'll do so in ways that are not predicted by your current perception of your students' abilities. Some of your strong students will reveal themselves to be strong only at mimicking, and will struggle on thinking tasks. Some of your weaker students will prove themselves to be much better at thinking than others in the class. And the ones in the middle will completely reshuffle your perceived hierarchy. So whatever ability groupings you thought you would make would not be homogeneous. Second, differentiation looks different in thinking classrooms. I'll discuss this in detail in Chapter 9. However, for now, I will just say that in the thinking classrooms, we start all groups on the same task and then differentiate the hints and the extensions that we give each group depending on how they're doing. The third reason not to worry about this is that, as mentioned earlier, diversity is a strength. Diverse groups are able to be more creative and more generative. Sometimes I like to let students think and work on a task before they go into their groups. Should I still do that with random groupings? No. In our research, we found that when we did this, it created too much diversity. The students who knew what they were doing would complete the task, while the ones that had no clue made no progress. When these students came together in random groupings, the differences in their abilities was too great and less collaboration took place. So macro move for this one. is frequently form visibly random groups, and in micromoves, K through 2 form groups of 2, 3 through 12, honestly, college 2, form groups of 3. Set up your method of randomization such that it tells students where to go in the classroom. Find a way to randomize such that the students know that you know what group they're in. Right? Questions to think about. What are some things in this chapter that immediately feel correct? Actually, I didn't take notes on that one, which I probably should have. Just my feelings on it. I definitely believe what he says when he says, like, you know, all of these, we tried all of these different ways to make all of this work, and these were the things that ended up working the best, right? The optimal size of 3 makes sense because, that one. Optimal size is 3 people in most of the older grades, because again, here you've got groups that can't really exclude people without being pretty obvious that they're being excluded. Some students will, I guess I could talk about that later, but some students will just break apart and be separate from each other even though they're not supposed to. But it starts going down over time. So you start seeing less and less of that behavior as time goes on. What's the worst combination of students that can come together in random groups? What is this perception based on? And is there any possibility that this could actually go well? So I would have probably said a bunch of slackers. Or like one really awesome student who, in the old model, really awesome student who does things well, who knows what they're doing, who gets stuck with a bunch of slackers. So in the old model, we would have seen that, yeah, they're going to just get completely run roughshod over. They're, you know, the other students are going to tell them, okay, well, you're going to do all the work anyway, so, like, we're just going to sit back and relax and talk with each other. And in Liljedahl's model, it doesn't really allow for that. So at the beginning of class, you do an interesting thinking task, which is to get students kind of warmed up. It usually has nothing to do with mathematics or very little to do with mathematics, or it is like a survey idea. So you start doing something that's more like, you know, bridges of Königsberg. You know, try and cross all 7 bridges to get onto the 4 land masses or whatever it is. And it's just not possible. So, you know, come up with a reason why it's not possible for this to happen. That student who thinks that they're weak and is probably just going to slack off and do nothing could end up saying to themselves, oh, I get this. Like, this makes sense. Why don't I understand, you know, the variables and stuff like that? What do you mean this little puzzle here is mathematics? That's not math. I'm not adding things. Well, actually, you are searching out patterns. You're looking for cool, you know, ideas that are hidden. You have to come up with some ideas which explain it. Can you think of some students who would benefit greatly from visibly random groups, and why would they benefit? So I wrote here that students who chronically do not participate are rather forced to under this model because there are only 3 people in your group. So you're probably not going to be matched up too much with the friend that you can just slack off with. You're going to probably be mixed up with a whole bunch of different people. And again, when you start doing oddball type mathematics like the bridges of Königsberg, then you end up doing things that you didn't expect you were able to do. Can you think of some students who will likely not enjoy randomized groups? Would it still be fun for them? So, my thought on this was any student who has a very strong sense of social hierarchy probably would not enjoy the hierarchy being broken. And I would imagine that this would be very good for them because now they can see how well collaboration can take place when, the old, and this is going to become a theme for me, by the way, when the old power structures are broken. What are some of the challenges you anticipate you'll experience in implementing the strategies suggested in this chapter? What are some of the ways to overcome these? So I didn't come up with anything like whenever I wrote this. Whenever I wrote my little notes in the margins. I didn't really have any problems eventually with the randomized groups. So similar to some of the concerns that popped up here, I also ended up having some students who were like, oh, well, I'm just going to do XYZ. I'm just going to go off on my own. I'm just going to switch into this group with this other person. And, it happened a lot, but after a quick discussion with a number of them, it was kind of like, hey, so just out of curiosity, like, where do you see this going? How do you think this is going to benefit or detract from your ability to do the work in class? And most of them were like, yeah, you know what, that's probably a good idea. We'll respect the randomness of all the stuff. Other ones just wanted to push my buttons, and they didn't really care. So, the try this in this one. As mentioned in the introduction and chapter 1, the practices in the first 3 chapters are implemented all together. Best implemented all together. In preparation for this, figure out what your preferred method of randomization in the class is. Keep in mind that whatever method you choose should not just tell your students what group they're in, but also where to go, and make it visibly random so that they know that, yes, the teacher did not just select this and pretend that it's random. It is actually random. Okay, so if anybody is interested in the book, this is Building Thinking Classrooms by Peter Liljedahl. Corwin Mathematics is the publisher. And Peter Liljedahl showed up at, oh, I had it open already. Showed up at the American Mathematical Association of Two-Year Colleges, 48th, I think. Yeah, 48th conference, which was held at Toronto, or in Toronto. And Peter himself is from British Columbia. I met a few other really awesome people from the area. Sunil Singh, who I believe he's actually from Toronto, who wrote Chasing Rabbits, which was all about doing mathematics for mathematics' sake and just having some fun with your students. Come up with some interesting problems. Right. Come up with an interesting sort of hook, which in this case is, hey, these circles, if you just draw circles with like points along the outside and then connect them in every way possible, then how many regions do each of them create? Or what is the maximum number of regions that you can create for each of these? And it turns out that when you start out, it looks like it doubles every time, but then when you get to the next one up, instead of 32, it's like, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 31. And students will go absolutely bonkers tearing their hair out trying to find out, where did I miss a 30-second thing? Like, if I just cross them slightly differently, is that going to make a difference? No. No, it maxes out at 31 because it is not exponential. Turns out it is quartic, I think. So because it's a quartic function, it ends up really messing everything up. All right. If anyone is interested, we are going to go over to... We're going to go see our friend Rogan, who is Rogan27, is friend from Geek and Sundry days. And we're going to head over. He is currently playing The Room 3, which is a puzzle type game. Seems like escape roomy type thing. So if you're interested in sticking around for that, then hang on out and we'll head on over there. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming. I will be back maybe tomorrow for some fun stuff, but definitely on Wednesday for math. We're going to talk about cracking the GRE math test. If anybody has any questions that they would like answered, I will definitely answer any other math questions that are not in that book. This, I just found, is an interesting source of problems while we're waiting for other problems to be discussed. So, see you all soon. Have fun. And, yeah. My name is Obi-Wan Pez. This is N Simplex Pachenko. See you next time.